Good morning, traders. It's Monday morning, so we've got our Comic Book University show, and today we're going to discuss grading books. So we do get asked quite a bit if I should grade a book. What do we look for in the criteria? I was at the local comic shop last week picking up my books, and I was consulting the gentleman on some pressing he wanted done, and he asked me, how do you determine which books need to be graded or which books you should get graded? And I thought that would make a good subject for some of our newer collectors, and of course I'm giving my opinion. Everybody who collects does it in a different way and may have a different take on it. I'm going to show you some books, and we'll go through values of those books and what they and what the effect that grading will have on them. So right now we got people popping up into the chat, and so if you have questions along the way, more than happy to have that discussion. Gary B showed up this morning. Good morning, Gary. Just real quick while the chat's filling up, I want to remind everybody the Grow Together initiative that Gary B started is something that I firmly believe in. We're getting a lot of buy-in into it. I've got a list of about 10 channels that want to participate in this. And once all these channels get up to that very important 1,000 sub mark, and there's going to be other giveaways before that. But that's the big one. Once these channels get up to that mark where they're being picked up by the algorithm and really doing something, we're going to give away a newsstand copy of Amazing Spider-Man 300. So, keep around for that. Amazing Spider-Man 300 could be yours by watching some good YouTube videos for the hashtag Grow Together movement. All right, so let's get into the subject. Now, everybody that knows me, so I do this really in two. I really exist in two different separate areas of the hobby. I am a collector. I've been a collector since I was a very youngin', and so I've got my personal collection. I've actually got it down to about a dozen short boxes of runs I'm completing, old books that are sentimental, things like that, just like everybody else. Not a single one of my books has been slabbed. I don't slab my personal collection. If I want something preserved, I archive it. I use a 4mm Mylar with a clear backing board, comic extenders, that type of stuff. And that's coming from my personal background, knowing historical documents and paper and what it takes to give it the longevity that it needs. So for the personal collection, I don't have any slab books. Now, on the other side of that, I'm also somewhat of a comic shop. I do shows and stuff like that, and I do sales in smaller towns that don't have comic shops, and free comic book day at libraries, stuff like that. So it's more of an outreach type business, and I kind of represent some of the Salt Lake City shops in these other areas, and because of that, I have an online store, and occasionally I'll have a slab come through, and I just became a facilitator for CGC because of my pressing business. So all that combined, I'm not against slabbing books, and I'm not against what that does for your book, but I do that professionally as opposed to my personal collection. Real quick, a couple people showed up in the chat. We got Southern Comic Geek. Good to see you here today. And Tacky616, good morning. So we're just going to get into it, and I'm going to give my take on the answer to this question. So for me, being a retailer, and that's where my graded comics are going to go. If a book is not going to show a marked improvement in overall value financially, then it doesn't make a lot of sense to grade it. And right now we're seeing 9.8s going at a premium. 9.8s right now are grabbing more of a premium than they ever have before, ever. And that's just a product of our times. The hobby's really hot right now. Got a lot of people coming in, and they are wanting the best of the best. So we're kind of seeing that happening now. Keep in mind, you hear a lot grading subjective, and those grades really don't mean anything, and so on and so forth. They really kind of do. So if CGC grades a book for you, and then you turn around to sell that book, I can take, no, I don't want to touch that with my bare hands. I could take this Tells to Astonish number 65, really cool Ant-Man Hulk cover, and it could be 5.0. I could say to me, it's an 8. I mean, that's a really nice book. It's solid, no tears or rips, just a little dirty, whatever. And then the person that receives the book can pick up the same thing and say, well, it's a 4. Well, if I get CGC, a completely independent third party, to grade the book and give us a grade, so we both know what we're getting and what we're giving on both ends, it just lends some credibility to the hobby. So yes, grading is subjective, and yes, you can send these books in, and the guy can have a bad day, he can have a good day, and your grade may fluctuate a little bit based on that. I mean, that's human nature, and there's no way around that. But it is, in my opinion, a far cry better if I'm going to represent a book as a 5.0. It's a lot better for me to have a third independent party representing that number instead of my opinion. So I think that's very important. Andrew Lopez says, current social situation have actually contributed to the market slab increases. I think that's very true. In the aspect that, our current social situation has gotten us to the point where comics have become really back into the forefront. And then we've got people, and I'm just going to call it as I see it. The big thing about grading and this happened back in the 90s as well, and I'm not relating this to the 90s bubble. It's something that completely different than happened in the 90s. We had a lot of sports card collectors coming into comic books, and sports card collectors are really, really detail oriented, and that actually probably came from coin collectors before that. But they came into the comic hobby, and so grade it was always an issue, but then it became a huge issue. And I think we're seeing that now. There's been a couple people. The one that comes to mind is Gary V, big sports card guy, mentioned publicly, I would get into comic books, but I don't know anything about it. They're a great investment, and a lot of people pay attention to him and his investment strategies, and that brought a lot of those people into our hobby, and we welcome them with open arms. But they do have a different mindset when it comes to things like grading, and that's why these 9.8s have become such a premium, in my opinion. So anyway, what we're going to do here is I'm going to grab, I think I put it here. Yes. Okay. So we're going to look at a modern book real quick. I'm going to start with this super cool Hive Comics variant Stray Dogs #1. So this is a huge book right now. Stray Dogs, super hot. I think we all just finished watching the Coffee with Comic show when Bueller was talking about it. I still have not read beyond issue #1. I keep saying I'm going to, but things happen. It didn't really float my boat. So anyway, so Stray Dogs #1, Hive Comics variant. This is the super hot one that everybody's after. Real quick catch up with the chat. Bueller showed up. Good morning, Bueller. And we've got Nick in the house. Station, my friend. Good to see you this morning. Okay, so we're going to split screen real quick, and we'll take a look at Stray Dogs #1. And this is kind of what I look for when we start talking about should we have a comic slabbed or not. So I go to my cover price, Stray Dogs issue #1. All right. And this A cover, like insane. Average comic sell $92.56 for Stray Dogs #1. This is what, 3-4 months old? Crazy stuff. All right. So you look at all these, and this is obviously the big boy on the block with the exclusive preview, super hard to find book. But Blair Witch Homage Hive Comics #1, $412. So your average sell for this book is $412. Your graded CGC 9.8, we've got a registered sell of $1,025. So if you're looking at this, this is what I'm talking about, that disparity between what grading will do for your book and what it won't. So let's go down and take a look at some sales data. So you've got that 9.8. A 9.8 average is $674. So we've got looks like a real outlier there with that 1,025. And we'll take a look at the sales data. So that is the most recent sell. Almost a full 2 weeks after the next closest sell to it. So and as we all know, that book jumped considerably in the last 2 weeks. Now, what makes this book hot? We can get into that, and I'll touch on it just a little bit here. Hive Comics starting to become more popular, kind of getting into that zeitgeist of the comic book community. I've known them for quite a while. They're good friends of mine, and you hear me talk about the Hive Comic guys a lot. And one of the things that they do that's starting to come out now, why their books are so hot and why they hold value, is because when they do a 500 print run book, they do 500 books. Now, most comic book people, when they do an exclusive variant, if Midtown does an exclusive, they say they have a 500 print count book. They do 600 books and then give a few out here and give a few out there. So it's not really 500 print count. When Hive says it's 500 print count, they only print 500, and they will physically destroy any damaged books. If it's not a 9.4 or better in their opinion, and they're really strict, it goes in the trash. I've seen them do it over and over again. So because of all that considered, that's why you see their books kind of hit a little bit higher than the rest. Super hard book, of course, to get in a high grade because of that mostly black cover, and it's a very popular book. So this is a perfect example of a book that you grab raw, and of course these came out. They were $15 retail price. I've got quite a few of them, and because of my relationship with the company, but yeah. But this is one that you grab for $15 and you send and get it slabbed and you turn it into, that $500-600 book. I saw Gary was talking. It's books like that I don't think will hold value over time. People are killing their wallets over. It's funny because Gary and I typically agree on just about everything. So his first statement, and these are good points, I somewhat disagree with this. When he says books like that, there are a lot of books like that, and I would agree completely that they're FOMO books, a lot of the punchline stuff, that we saw, felt spec stuff. I see that kind of stuff all the time. We all do. And I would agree with that as a general broad statement. I think this particular book, what's driving it is not just the FOMO. I mean, we're getting some of that, of course, but it's really the story kind of resonates with people. Not so much the story, but the feel of the book, the kind of reminiscent Don Bluth-ish kind of art. That whole thing brings us back to, All Dogs Go to Heaven, that kind of childhood memories. It stirs that up. And then they toss in all these super cool horror homage variants. And I think that just created a perfect storm around this book. And it's obviously, from a spec point of view, a book that if somebody doesn't option this, they're stupid. They're just stupid. And we will see stray dogs coming to the screen, I believe. And that, of course, on a spec standpoint, is going to drive the book. But this is an extremely good point that Gary makes here. With current turnaround times being, 4 to 6 months at a minimum, a lot of times what's hot now, you'll send these books off and you won't see them come back until after they've hit their peak. And now you're trying to sell on the downward slope, which gets really hairy and scary. So something to be aware of as well. So if you're doing it for investment purposes, that's something for sure that you need to look at. I don't think we're at the peak of stray dogs, but there is going to be a downslide on that one for sure. And that's exactly, I agree with Nick completely. I mean, that's, of course, our opinion, but Paramount, I was unaware of that. Good morning, HK Wifey. Good to see you this morning. So anyway, so that's kind of a little background on slabbing, and a lot of people say if a book is raw worth $30, that's where you get into it, and that's where you start slabbing them. For investment purposes, that's not how I look at it. The way I personally look at it is I take the cost of the book. So let's say a book cost me $15. So I'm into it $15 right now. Now let's look at the cost to slab that book. Well, this one is going to cost you $75, $80 to get it slabbed. So you're into it right around that $100 mark, shipping, packing materials, all that. You're into it about $100. If I can't make $200 on the sale, I'm not going to waste my time. I'm not going to send it in. I'm not going to slab it. And that goes across the board. So Nightwing 78 came out, very popular book. I think there's a little bit of staying power there. And that could be potentially a pretty big book if that character takes off. So that's a book that cost me $5, cost me another $35 to have it slab, shipping and everything. I'm into it $45. If I'm not going to be able to sell that for $90 when I get it, then it's not worth sending it. That's my opinion. That's how I look at it personally. And you have to speculate on the market at that point. You have to decide whether in the 6 months it takes to get that book back, is it going to go up? Is it going to go down? Is there any long-term hold there? And there's a lot of channels that get into that kind of stuff. Comic Kings does some of that, and he does a pretty good job with it. You know, the Tell from Flipside guys do a lot of that. It's not my jam. I'm not there, but you know, some guys you can listen to that know the market pretty well. So you got that going for you. I think with so many properties going to streaming service, I would agree with that. Have not seen Jupiter's Legacy. But when it comes to that, it's really odd because you got like the Jupiter's Legacy thing. We saw a bump and people were excited and there was buzz, and then the show kind of bombed and then was canceled. And then they sent out another book that did well. So that was kind of a weird situation for me. And then you've got Sweet Tooth, which was, I never read the books. The books started to do well because of the TV show. They were doing well to begin with, but then they did better because of the TV show. And it's kind of interesting to see where that will go. And then you got things like The Boys. The Boys, big hit on Amazon, and really driving the heck out of those books. And then, of course, Walking Dead, that just stratospheric rises there. I would be interested in seeing what would happen with Stray Dogs and a Canto. The Canto thing would be an interesting one to follow as well. All right, so back to grading. So when you get to the point where you've decided whether a book is either financially where it should be for grading, or is a book with enough personal significance that you want it to be preserved in that way, you know, then you have to look at your grading services. And I've done a lot of this recently because I was not coming back into the hobby a few years ago after being gone. Grading is something that was new, and I was just not on board with it. And the reason I was not on board with it is I purchased a Slab book. It was Conan #2. And it was slabbed at an 8.5. So it's a really nice book. And when I was looking at it, I had rust on the staples, and I would never buy a book that has rusted staples. That's just a deal breaker for me in most cases. And I, of course, assumed I'm in good shape. It's an 8.5. There's no way it's got rust. It's intact. And I cracked the book, and sure as anything, there was rust on that staple, and I had to remove the staple and replace it, and go through all that effort and chamber the book to arrest all that little bit of sporing. So that right there turned me off to Slab books. Of course, it was an older Slab, and what had happened is they sealed the book into a somewhat airtight container with, you know, humid Florida air, and that's what happens. So that right there told me I didn't want to Slab books. Now, since then, CGC has gone to new cases that breathe and will allow for humidity fluctuations, and you shouldn't see those type of issues going forward with the new slabs. But it is something that was really concerning to me and kind of turned me off to slabs to begin with. But I did some research into other options and other grading companies. My thought was that even though they sell for less, I could get a PGX book and start working with them, because maybe the initial cost of that would be different. And then I, went down that rabbit hole of PGX and why their books are whole value and all the drama that is PGX. And then you look at CBCS, who's really holding comparable values to CGC nowadays. And I was looking more at the quality of the product as opposed to value, because I had no intention on selling slab books at that time. I was still working in the private sector and not doing my pressing job. So, selling books was not something I was interested in. So I did some research, and we compared a lot of different grading companies. And we'll go over that real quick. But first, I just wanted to, Jen showed up. Good morning, Jen. Awesome show on the Comics with Bueller show today. Really enjoyed that. If you're not watching Comics Will Break Your Heart, I typically do, so I watch the coffee show, and then I do my live, and then I will catch up on Comics Will Break Your Heart in their Sunday show. Jen and Mars have a fantastic show. Go give them a sub. I love what they're doing over there. As a old middle-aged white guy, which seems to be a huge portion of the comics industry. They talk about subjects in a way that will help you relate to kind of more of the fringe comic community and make us all inclusive without alienating us. And it's a very safe place, very inclusive show. So if you're not subbed up to Comics Will Break Your Heart, please do so. Fantastic. I think I actually have this still. I do. I'll toss that in there. Go give her a sub. So anyway, so as we look at the different comic book companies, we've got CGC, CBCS, who's now hiring. Everybody's hiring. We've got EGS, and I've spent a lot of time on the phone with these guys. I really dig what they're doing over there. And then we got PGX. I'm not going to recommend PGX. I recently, in the last week, so they're trying to turn around their reputation, and they send out a bunch of PGX graded books to YouTube channels, and most YouTube channels turn them back, from what I understand. Comic Tom talked about them for a minute, but really they've hurt themselves reputation wise, and your word is your bond when it comes to stuff like this. So that's been a real issue. So CGC is, of course, the big boys on the block. We've all seen CGC. Slabs, the new slabs are fantastic. I still think I prefer CBCS slabs, but the new slabs here are great. They've taken a lot of heat recently because it seems that for one thing, turnaround times are just brutal, and it seems that their grading standards have gone down a notch or two. Or I guess they've gone up. So you're getting lower grades than what you've been seeing recently. So I think that's really interesting. I've always thought that they've graded a bit too generously, and I've got my own issues with kind of the trust factor and the philosophy of comic grading and the way they price. but something that, but it is something that that we need to be aware of. So, so CGC, of course, the big boys on the block, and then we go over to CBCS, a CBCS slab. Like, they've got, in my opinion, the second best slabs on the market as far as the product itself. I like the way they're put together. I like the glues that they use. That's a super important part of it. I've done a lot of research into the physical makeup of these slabs and how they're put together. The one big drawback, of course, with CBCS is the labels, and they don't seem to be wanting to change those anytime soon. I really think if CBCS were to do something different with the labels, it would change overnight, and they would be the industry leader. They've always been known for stricter grading criteria. I don't know if that's true, honestly. It does seem to hold a little bit of weight, but with the way that CGC has been grading lately, it could go either way, right? So CBCS does have a really good product, and I really like what they do over there. I think if I were to slab a book for my personal collection, it would be CBCS. And then EGS, which is Expert Grading Services. I like the product. They have, in my opinion, the best slab on the market. They do it a little bit differently. So with EGS, what you get, let's see, is they use a resealable slab. So these slabs are designed, they're made by a company named Comic Skin. And I've actually done a review. It's somewhere in the archives of the channel on Comic Skin. And they're slab it yourself kits. So they design these to where you can slab your own book. And I think I do have one here. So this is my Herald's Journey #1. Want to do. So this is my Herald's Journey #1. This is the Rogue Trader exclusive variant. Got it signed by the artist and everything. Real fun book, but of course I'm not going to send this into CGC. But I wanted it to have that slab look. So this is the one I put into a Comic Skin. So the slabs are hinged at the bottom, and then they have these little strips on the side that pull off, and then once it's closed, you just put those up, and it seals the book in. And then they've got a little bladder inside to help you center it, make it look all professional. And then you can print out your own label, so you can do 100% custom labels, print them out on your own computer, and do that whole thing. So I really like this product, and we'll get into why I really like this product in a minute here. But this is the one that EGS uses. Let's set you down there for now. And so we'll go back there real quick. And EGS also does these like full color labels to match your books, and like they really make it pop. So if you look over here, you can see the hollow tabs. So they seal the book in, and then they put these tamper-proof holographic stickers on them, so you will know if the book's been opened. I like that. I think this is a better way to slab a book. Tacky just asked in the chat, do you know if all encapsulation companies use breathable labels? Now, I do know at this point the new CGC and the CBCS slabs are breathable. Of course, this one from EGS is also breathable. The one thing that I could not get the answer on, and what's even more important than the breathability of the slabs, is UV protectant. So you don't want your covers fading inside these slabs. And if you look at some old, Halo was really bad about it. If you can get your hands on an old Halo book, or the old kind of soft protectors that CGC used to use, if you get a hold of some of that old stuff that the comics been there for years and held in a sunlit area, you can see the bleaching, the damage from the UV. So one thing that I really like about the comic skin and the EGS slabs is they are made UV protectant, they breathe, and they also, the gases, because plastics break down, and when they do, they give off gases that will damage paper. So the type of plastic that's used in the CBCS and comic skins will keep that from happening. I believe that the new CGC slabs are like that. I'm not 100%, so I can't quote that. But with a little bit of research, we could probably find that out. Just important things to look for when you're looking at putting these books inside a hard plastic protector for the next 100 years. We get a lot. So in the chat, Gary B talking about CBCS. I'm starting to look at them more. Of course, being a facilitator for CGC, I got some credit there, so I need to use that up. So books are going off to CGC. But I am looking at doing a batch for CBCS. Nick, the comic nerd, good morning. Okay, so back to EGS. So my thing with EGS, I like the slabs, obviously. I like the look of it. I like the way they put it together. My issue with them, and it's not... So in my conversation with him, we talked on the phone one day for a few hours about all this, and he's really wanting to break into this space. He's got a great product. He's actually looking at getting permanent sealed slabs because a lot of people are not liking the resealable slab. So he's looking at something that's going to be more permanent, and we'll probably be seeing that coming from him in the next couple of months. My big issue here is nothing against the guy. He does it by himself. So this gentleman works out of his home in Florida and did this grading company, and kudos to you. But CGC, CBCS, even PGX, the way that they supposedly do their grades is they have at least 3 people looking at the books, and then they take an average. Well, that seems more fair and more objective than one person's opinion. So that's kind of my only criticism about EGS as a company. And I'm sure if he was able to grow the company to get more employees to put something like that in place, that he would have, in my opinion, a superior product. The only other thing that I could say about these, and this is one of the reasons I was looking at PGX last week, cost. So in my opinion, if you're going to start a grading company and you want to break into that space, you want to be lower price than the leader. CBCS is roughly about the same price as CGC, a little bit higher in some cases. But CBCS is kind of like the honey badger of comic grading companies, just doesn't care. So Um, he's going to do his own thing over there, and that's just how it's going to be. But with EGS, I would think that he would want to lower his price to be more competitive in the marketplace and maybe gain some customers. But he's quite a bit more expensive than CGC, so it kind of makes it not really worth it. I was looking at PGX because they will do a slab for like $13 at this point because they just want to get their name out there again. And I was looking at that because I was like, well, it may not have resale value, but if I want something graded, I've got my exclusives that I've done. It would be cheaper for me to send a book to PGX to have it graded than to buy a slab it yourself kit and do it myself. But ultimately, it all came down to integrity, and with what I've seen from PGX, I just can't, in good conscience, support that in any way. So I chose not to. So I ordered a bunch of comic skins, and I'll do it myself. So that's kind of the different companies. Prices range everywhere from about $25, $30 on the low end for a modern book, less than $400, on up to thousands of dollars, 10% of a book's value to walk it through. And those are for the big boys, of course. Those are your Amazing Fantasy 15s and or Detective 27s, stuff like that. So there's a wide range of value or of cost, and then you have to figure cost versus value. Is it worth spending the money to get it done, like we discussed earlier? Another kind of honorable mention I wanted to show, because honestly, when I first got into this, I was actually, me and some buddies were talking about starting a grading company. That's not going to happen, obviously. That's not a place that you can break into with less than a couple $1 million. So that's not even an option. Okay, so again, comic slabs, I really dig them. Another thing Comic Slab does, crystal clear backing boards. Those I buy a lot of because I do archive books. And to archive a book, I take the book, I press it, I clean it, I let it dry, I do all that kind of stuff. And then I put it in a 4mm Mylar with a clear backing board so you can see both sides of the book, and it's just crystal clear. I wish I had one handy here I could show you. But yeah, crystal clear backing boards, really cool product that's offered from Comic Skin. But the last one here, my honorable mention, Gator Guards. So these are not a slab, and they are resealable. But it's a really, really cool product. Let's see if I can bring up a picture of them. They don't have a picture, but so I've done a lot of research into this, and this is a fantastic product. They don't have the label up at the top, like right here where you would see your CGC label. They don't have that spot, but they are a very sturdy, solid, well put together, deep well protector. I've got my Howard the Duck. I don't know where I set that one down at. I've got my Howard the Duck #1, or my first kiss in comic books on Howard the Duck. I've got that in one of these. UV protectant. They've just been fantastic. You can get different colored screws to go in them, kind of accentuate your books. I actually much prefer these over any of the slabbing option, just because all you're looking at is the book. My next thing is I'm trying to find a way to mount these on walls that are effective. But you can pretty much put one of these any place that you put a slab. They're not quite as tall as a slab, but they do a much better job in protecting your books. So that's kind of my spiel on comic grading and grading services. Just to recap, be aware of why you're having your book graded. If it's for resale, look at at least the big two, CGC, CBCS, and and kind of determine the value. Use your comic shop. Use eBay sold listings to determine the value of your raw book versus your slab book to see if investing an additional, $50, $100,000, whatever it's going to be, is worth doing. What is it going to take to get the market value? I think we're there, honestly. At least we're there on premium keys. I don't think, if you look at what's going on in the industry, there is a bizarre outlier I'll talk about in a second, but if you follow these big keys, I am seeing books like Daredevil #1 is a great example. People are going to pay for a 9.8 the same for CGC or CBCS because it's an extremely rare book and in such an unattainable grade to begin with. So I see that happening quite a bit with the bigger books. Not so much with, Department of Truth #1, stuff like that. They're catching up. CBCS is catching up to CGC pricing on books like that. I think we're only 15-20% down at this point, and that gap is closing quickly. But certainly your big keys, silver and golden age stuff, without a doubt, you're not seeing much of a difference. And the really bizarre outlier I was talking about, I'm trying to remember, I'm pretty sure it was a Daredevil #1 that was graded by PGX, actually sold for more than a CGC book, which is just insane. Insane to me. And this is a good question, Tacky. I looked into it because of the way that he produces the comic skin books, or the comic skin slabs. He does them in small batches, so the gentleman that does them only makes a small percentage on them. So if I were to sell them, I would only be able to make, I think, $2, because I'm not going to price over what he sells them for, because that's ridiculous. So the wholesale cost on that for me would be like a $2 discount. So it really doesn't pay for me to have them in stock. That being said, if somebody wants something slabbed in one of those, like archived in one of those, I can do that. I keep one or two on hand for that reason. But if you're wanting to buy the product, just go to the Comic Skins website and buy them directly from him. It supports him, makes him a little bit more money, and helps him out more, and helps get this awesome product on the market. "62 Lefty Blues" says, I've not slabbed anything, but use thicker mylar for key issues. That's kind of what I do. I use the 4mm mylar, like I said. And one of the thoughts that I had as when we were talking about creating a grading company is I wanted to create a place where people could send books in to have them graded by a third party. It was me and a couple of my buddies that were going to do this, and we could do pretty much what EGS is doing and put them in a resealable slab and put the tamper-proof holograms on them, do that whole thing. But we want to do it in a way that it could be done for $10 to $15, so it would be a more affordable option for those books that that aren't high dollar. There's a lot of books out there that people just want preserved and want to grade on, but don't want to spend an exorbitant amount of money. And that just kind of morphed into the archiving process that I do for books, because it's the exact same thing. They're in the Mylar and everything, and I will even put notes with the book about damages and what my perspective on the grade is. So it's not really a grading service, but that's just kind of the service that it morphed into, and we have that available. Nick says, agreed, modern stuff has a wider market value gap depending on the company used. Yeah, for sure. Department of Truth and Something's Killing Children, both of those are great examples of that. And it's funny because Canto is pretty comparable. CBS and CGC and CBCS are pretty comparable in prices on that book. Department of Truth, I don't the big one, Stray Dogs, right now. I'm not really sure haven't really looked into that one right yet. Yeah, when you start talking about signed books, it's a whole different animal. I know some people that do signature authentication and work for a grading company doing that, and I would trust them. I mean, if they say it's legit, it's legit. I mean, the science that goes into all that is amazing. The amount of time that they spend staring at these signatures is just insane. I think that there is a disservice to the community in the way that some companies are handling. I'm trying to be diplomatic. Okay, CGC is screwing the customers. That's what it is. Their signing events are insanely overpriced. I miss the days where, I got my first Stanley signature for free. I walked up to him in the Redwood Road Rec Center at a comic book show, handed him a book. He signed it. We talked for a minute. That's how it was done. I know that that's not how it's done nowadays. And I understand why they do things the way they do, because people are using that as an additional revenue source. But to me, it's really doing us a disservice, and the fact that I, as a collector, could not get my books signed. Donnie Cates did a signing just before the pandemic hit, did a signing at my LCS, and I was unable to get him to sign a book at that time. Now I'll never get it because I'm not paying $150 to get a book signed by Donnie Cates. I won't do it. I'll wait till something comes around on the market and I can grab it, which is a shame because I would like to meet these creators and I would like to interact with them. And to me, I would like to have personalized signatures back and not just a scribble on a page. But that's just kind of my deal. Yeah, there's no way, as much of a Jim Lee fan as I am, I would never pay him for a signature. Let's see. 180, 181, and 182. I just did a 182 yesterday, actually. Just pressed a 182 for a gentleman. A book that is starting to really kind of take off now since the other two have become unobtainable. But yes, I would agree with Tacky. I would get those slabbed. I would get them slabbed now, knowing what I know about the process. Those are books that I would have sent to CBCS and slabbed with their system, because I think it lends more longevity to the life of the book. If you want to go another route, like the Gator Guards are, I think, a sturdier product, I would have them archived, and with everything that goes into that. If that's a process that you're really interested in looking at, reach out to me and I can walk you through the process. I'm happy to do it. We can also talk about getting you the supplies needed to do that. And then you threw in this, leaving them for the sun to cash when I'm gone. If that's the case, CBCS all the way, in my opinion. Yeah, I still don't know if that would be worth it. $250 for 5 signatures, so you're looking at $50 a signature, and it's just scribbling on the page. I do have signed books in my collection, but they're books and they say, "To Eric, thank you for showing up," and that type of stuff. So it's really kind of a two-edged sword. Well, I appreciate that, and we can discuss what you want to do with them. But yeah, for sure, if the intention is to leave it there as an investment in your children's future, with the intent of them being sold down the line, then the grading service is really the only way to go there, for sure. All right, so that's my take on should I get this graded, should I not. Been a great conversation this morning. Just a reminder, hashtag Grow Together. Once all of our Grow Together channels, and we'll be releasing a list of those channels in the coming week. Once they all reach 1,000 subs on YouTube, we are going to be giving away. It's actually going to be a bundle at this point. We've got Amazing Spider-Man 252 and Amazing Spider-Man 300 that are going out to a lucky member of our audience. So something to look forward to. And then when you see the Grow Together channels go up, make sure you subscribe to all of them, and we'll get you entered into the drawing to become a winner. When you send a valuable book to me, to some. Oh, Nick says he's going to toss in a couple books, so that's awesome. Now, of course, we're doing a giveaway at 500. It's going to be Stray Dogs #1, The Silence of the Lambs cover, and a copy of Bleak Haven #1, my very first exclusive comic. All right, so when sending valuable books to the big two slabbing companies, how much more does it cost to slab them? And this is an issue I have. So they have different tiers, right? In CGC, the first tier is a modern book, 1974 to present, up to $400 in value. Those books cost, $25, $30, and that's what you pay, plus shipping, obviously. And then they have, I can't remember what they call all their tiers. See, services and fees. So modern 1975 to present, $400, $22, and that's gone up a little. Economy is pre-75 up to $400 is $33. So those are your silver golden age books, up to $400. And then you got standard, which is up to $1,000, and then it jumps almost $50 to $75. So it isn't until you get down to an actual walkthrough where you do fair market value for a book. with a minimum of $150. So they're expecting that to be used on the big boys, on your AF-15s and Detective 27s, your GSXs, stuff like that. To me, this is kind of a dishonest system, and not that I don't trust CGC, and not that I think that they're trying to pull something shady, but who's to determine what that fair market value is, right? If I have, and it's a question that keeps coming up, and I will go back to Stray Dogs #1. So this book, we're seeing sales of over $1,000 on it. Well, we've seen one 9.8 sell of over $1,000. Everything else has been down in the $400 range. So is it a modern book, which I pay $25 for, or is it the standard, which is $1,000 plus? Actually, they have a max value of $1,000. So this would be $120 if we base it on that $1,025 price tag. And who gets to determine that? To me, I've got a handful of these. This is, maybe $100, $125 book. And it won't be that $1,000 book until after it's slabbed. So is it pre-slab price, post? It's not really clear. So that's an issue that I have with that part of the grading puzzle. And that's why, and their pressing services do the same thing. A lot of pressing companies are like, if it's on this tier, then it's this much. That's why I price the way I do on my pressing service, because to me, these two books are worth one shouldn't cost any more than the other to press. As a matter of fact, this is a much easier press, so this should be less, right? That's why I just do a flat fee and then charge based on just for the insurance of the book. And it's a flat 1% of whatever you determine is the value of your book. Morning Fable. Fable finally rolled out of bed, got himself a cup of coffee, and he decided he was going to join us today. So, yeah, that's kind of a pet peeve of mine with the grading companies. I think that we should be able to determine the value of our books and let us determine, that piece of it. So, all right, folks. So went a bit over time. In the future, I do try to keep this Monday morning thing down to about 30 minutes. I think an hour is a bit too long for this, but we get to chat and it kind of goes up there. If anybody else would like to do kind of a Monday morning thing and then jump on a live right after I get done, it's hard to do pre-tape stuff because, I follow Bueller. So it's hard to determine because his time fluctuates. But if you want to do this and continue a conversation or get out there and so people have something to watch on Monday mornings, get their week started, reach out to me, let me know, and we can get a lineup going. It would be awesome. But that being said, I'm going to cut out here. I got a ton of work to do. I got books all over the place that need to get in the press. So, Fable, you're such a sweetheart, buddy. All right. I will talk to you later, traders.